Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of the Royal Watcher Podcast, where Sam and I today are going to be talking about the magnificent jewels we saw at the state opening of Parliament, which may be kind of one of the last occasions we see all the peeresses there.
Really? Why? What's happening?
Well, we'll discuss this a bit
She says
later, but
she says living in London and should probably know these things.
we'll discuss it in a bit. But the new government has announced that basically they're getting rid of the remaining hereditary peers left. So,
Yeah, that remains to be seen. Eh.
yeah.
Yeah.
But let's get started on the good things and go on to the next slide where we see King Charles and Queen Camilla processing into the chamber of the House of Lords. And here you see the full pomp of the ceremony on display where the king and queen arriving in crowns with robes. And I mean, people online have such a big issue about this whole thing. Oh, why is he wearing a crown? Why are they dressed up? And I mean, let us have something nice.
You
Why?
know, someone said on Twitter, they were like, okay, let's go do it down the community centre. Would that make it better? No.
No. Will that make people like have less of a cost of things, prices or anything else? No.
No. And
So,
once again, I've had to sort of, people say, oh, that crown, we should sell it. To who? Who would buy it?
yeah.
Would it
And it's
solve
like
everything?
it's a 5 billion crown and he's arriving in a gold carriage and all of that. And I'm like, even if you get rid of them, you're not selling the crown or the carriage. So
Yeah. So.
I
Yes,
think
every
that
every year we have to have these little people. Shut up.
exactly, yeah. At some point they need to touch grass and realize that's not how the world
Well,
will
works.
work
Yeah,
and they stop just complaining. But
yeah. But they look lovely. They look
yes,
lovely.
me too.
But they're nice, big tiaras.
They are really nice. But one thing I do want to mention is I know it's probably her age and the kind of mobility stuff with all the moving around and the robes and everything. But I'm kind of wish Queen Camilla would wear more orders with her gown because just the plain gown looks a bit odd. But if I had like a sash on it, especially because her garter star is so kind of small and she wears it so low anyway, that it just seems kind of the lack of ornamentation makes it look very plain.
Oh, I didn't realize, I never even thought about that the orders must be quite heavy. But yeah, that would make
Yeah.
sense, wouldn't it? Okay.
And if you think about this, like the order sash, the garter that she wore that, or even like the big collar, and then trying to put that the robe on with the gold, like little straps on, so that would just mess everything up. And just imagining kind of her trying to get in and out of the carriage and all that, and trying to keep everything in place. That's probably why she doesn't wear it in the first place.
Ah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, and then we move on to the main event, which was King Charles wearing the magnificent imperial state crown, which has on front the Cullinan 2 diamond and the Black Princess ruby as well. But this crown is transported from the Tower of London first to Buckingham Palace, and then it comes to the Palace of Westminster in its own carriage, which I always think is quite fun to see. And the fact it has its own crowd that's following them, the king changes puts the crown on when he arrives at the palace, gives a speech, and then takes it off.
Yeah, can you imagine the security that must be around that when that happens?
Oh yeah. I was actually thinking because of the king's cancer and all his kind of health issues, he might actually not wear it this year because it is pretty heavy. But and they might just carry it on a pillow like they did for the late queen in the last couple of years of her reign. But this is a nice development, and I mean, the fact that he could read the speech and he didn't seem uncomfortable for the most part was good.
Yeah, he's waited too long. He's wearing that crown at every opportunity he can get.
Yeah. And then along with that, I do want to mention the chain of the garter that he's wearing, which has that famous diamond encrusted Great George, which is also one of those historic heirlooms of the crown, and only comes out at appearances like this.
Mm.
So we move on to Queen Camilla, who wore the King George IV state diadem, which was actually featured in a video shared by the Royal Collection on the day of the coronation and gave a very like clear view of everything, which is quite nice because most of the time with these jewels you don't really see them by themselves.
Yeah, and they're not on display, not in the Tower of London or anything. So it is very nice
Yeah.
to see a good like 4D video of them, especially for people like me who study these things. If I can't see
Exactly.
them in person, this is the next best thing.
Yeah. I did actually see this one in person on the day the Queen died, and it was displayed at Buckingham Palace. But what struck me was how small it was in contrast to the other things. And with the Queen's tiaras that Camilla has worn, she's kind of opened them up so they look larger than they have. But this is because it's a full circlet. It's remained the same size, and it does look smaller on Camilla than the other tiaras she's worn.
Oh, okay.
That's just an observation I have. And along with that, she wore her modern diamond earrings, which were a gift from Charles a couple of years ago, and a diamond riviere, which a lot of us believe is Queen Alexandra's diamond riviere. And I mean, it's massive diamonds, and the more we look at it, it's like pretty decent size of that.
Yeah, those are huge. Do I detect a faint gold chain underneath?
I think so too, yeah.
Hmm. Wonder what that
But
is.
an interesting look all around, I think.
Very much.
It's a nice, if you were gonna have a uniform, it's a nice uniform to have.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next lady who was actually first we're going to talk about what the king announced during his speech is that the government said that they want to abolish the hereditary peers in the House of Lords. There were only 92 left after the reforms of 1999, and that meant the peeresses were really reduced, and we got no other members of the royal family attending. And now, if the government does go ahead with their plans, the slot won't be there either.
It's very complicated. Obviously, this is a royal watching podcast, so I won't get too political.
Yeah.
But it would be a shame. It's always a shame not to see the nice historic tiaras on show, especially at an event like this. But it's oh god, it's not time. It's not time and place for me to get on my soapbox.
No, I think you can go and talk a bit about from my side, I think it's a bit of like that link to history. And then the fact that again, like with those people who complain about these sorts of things, removing those 92 people from an unelected house in the first place won't create that much of a difference.
It won't on that level. And it's like, well, if you're going to remove hereditary peers, there's, I don't know how libel laws work on podcasts, but let's just say there's a couple of recent additions who are there for hereditary reasons
Oh,
and are
definitely. Yeah.
now getting £300 a day for life. Just, no, I mean, you can libel me.
Yeah.
I've got nothing you, the lawyers want worth taking, but yeah, taking away hereditary peers is a good thing, maybe not a good thing historically wise. Maybe if you took away their voting rights, maybe if we completely abolished the entire secondary chamber. It's a long, long thing.
Yeah, and it's a lot of what ifs that might improve the system, but it's just kind of for show. It won't actually have that much of a difference on anything.
No, not really.
So it is kind of so that's in a sense it might be the last time that we see this sort of thing, but I don't know how likely the government are to pass
I'm
that
not being
sort of
funny. We got bigger issues right now.
exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why I thought the inclusion of this into their first speech was very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's move on to the good stuff, which is the tiara.
Yay!
And we saw Princess Antonia, Duchess of Wellington, wearing something that wasn't the big Wellington tiara. She wore this actually quite stunning diamond floral tiara, which was worn by a previous Duchess as a corsage. And then the Duchess also had a massive kind of corsage brooch worn at her neck, which a lot of people really appreciated that look, and they thought it created quite a striking um, full ensemble.
I mean, my Instagram post, I said it in German. Das ist ein Prussian, right? That she looks like a lady who would have like stared down Bismarck. Like that, she's a real throwback in the nicest way to of how a different world of dressing. She's shown up to the Houses of Parliament in her best jewels, in her best dress. And she's like I'm pretty sure she is sort of the last of a dying breed that goes, you know, does the whole nine yards when it comes to dressing for for
Oh
Parliament. I
yeah,
do remember her last year with her Riviere, which was bigger than Queen Camilla's. It was so impressive. But
it
she
was.
is, yeah, she's kind of dressed in white, the last white hope of that kind of dressing.
Yeah, no, the way how she carries herself, it's so stately and it is very much a dying breed. Like you can imagine her great great grandmother, the Princess Royal, kind of behaving like this and staring down Bismarck, as you were saying, and you can see that she carries that regal way of carrying herself to the
Yeah. There's a certain look, isn't there? Which I think comes from centuries of, a certain kind of breeding. And you go, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
No, but I think overall she is really the standout of the sword ceremony, and seeing her there is just lovely.
Yeah.
And one thing I actually want to add, which we saw last year, not now, but she's wearing beautiful pearl earrings now, but last year she wore these diamond earrings you can see on the fourth duchess's on like the her shoulders. And those diamonds belong to Louis the 14th and were given by Louis the 17th to the Duke of Wellington as like a badge of like the French Order of Saint Esprit, I believe. And the second Duchess had to convert them into earrings, and so those diamonds are like 300 years old.
Wow. You see? Who else has got that?
Exactly. I think the Wellington collection is really next to none at this point.
Hmm.
And unlike the other ducal collections, he actually wears some.
Yes. Hinty, hint, hint. Rutland.
Or the Becluse.
All the blue clues.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Rutland might have a chance to wear them sometime soon.
Yep.
Okay, let's go on to the next lady, who is the Marchioness of Lansdowne, Queen Camilla's leading lady in waiting. And I will call them lady in waiting because Queen's Companion is like calling Twitter X. No one does that. So
Sacrilege.
it is. I mean, this is the stunning diamond floral tiara of the Marquesses of Lansdowne. It's one of the previous Marchionesses were a lady of the bedchamber to Queen Alexandra, and you can see her wearing it at the coronation. But I kind of like this is a really classic floral tiara, and the Marchioness wears it really well.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It's similar to the one the Duchess of Wellington had on, don't you think?
Yeah, and quite a bit. And then this one's quite versatile as well because she wore the central element as a brooch during the coronation. I
Yeah.
wish she could have worn the entire tiara because that would have created a nicer visual, but you have
Mm.
to accept what we get.
Yeah, exactly. And she's wearing the royal cipher, which is nice.
Yeah, and she's actually the rather than lady in waiting badges, this is what she's worn whenever kind of she's accompanied Queen Camilla on even like informal engagements. So I like that gets good use out of it.
Yeah.
But overall, a nice look. But I mean, whenever I see her, I'm reminded of two things. First off, the middle school I went to was called Lansdowne because of one of her husband's ancestors. So I immediately remember that. And then the second thing I remember is something that our friend Jacob said on the day of the coronation. And we saw the Marchioness and Camilla's sister walking behind her. And he was like, oh, these are the two backup Camillas. So, I mean, it's the same hairstyle, the same style of gown.
That's a look. The
It is a look.
look.
But I mean, she seems lovely, and I hope to have an
Yeah.
article out on the tiara for her 70th birthday in a couple of months. And
Nice.
feel new details. But I mean, every time she wears it, I'm like, oh, I should have published that already. But I'm like, no, I have to wait for that major anniversary because I'm LCD like that.
Yeah. Same.
Okay, let's go on to the next ladies in waiting, which is Lady Sarah Keswick, who's the daughter of the Earl of Dalhousie, and she's wearing this classic diamond fringe tiara, which I'm really happy to see. But kind of the origins of this have been impossible to trace because it just kind of appeared out of nowhere.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I've got a very long article on fringe tiaras that's like my thesis. I
Yeah.
don't know when I don't know when or how I'll ever finish it, but they are impossible to identify.
Oh yeah.
They just all look the same and they were so popular. They were like the Pandora bracelet for the aristocracy back in the day. It's like, ah. Where's this one from?
I know. I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna do a whole like roundup on how many fringe tiaras there are, and I was like, oh, it's probably like 10, and
No,
then
we
I'm
we
up to
could
like
we
50
could
now.
we could swap notes. There's too many. There's
Yes,
too many.
let's do a joint article.
Yeah.
That'll be our life's work.
Mm,
The impact of the Russians on European royal jewelry.
yeah, it's a good thesis. It's a good thesis.
So, Lady Sarah recently got widowed a couple of weeks ago, but it was
Oh,
nice to see
sad.
her come back, and her necklace is also quite nice, and I would imagine that also doubles up as a tiara as
I was
well.
just thinking that that looks convertible.
But I mean, overall, these are like the two most classic examples of jewelry to have, and it's good that she has both.
Yeah.
Mm. Again, it's the same. The both of them are repeating their same outfits as the last state openings. So if I even like swap the pictures, which I have in both cases, you can't really tell.
Well, that's good. He's all about recycling. So if it's going to be
Yeah,
big dresses, then fine.
continuity. Okay, let's move on to the biggest surprise, which was the Countess How wearing this magnificent How fringe tiara, which has made its round on Pinterest for the past couple of years, but we haven't seen it worn since the 60s.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say it looks familiar, but like in a not what in a way that I don't like it's mushed two
Yeah,
tiaras together.
I really feel like, again, it's a fringe tiara, but that bandeau piece should be worn separately.
Oh, that's so annoying. I'm trying to think what it reminds me of, and it's gone out of my head. Ah, that's it. It reminds me of the Spencer tiara. The
Yes, it does.
yeah,
I,
where they're just smushed two. I'm sure there's a more technical word. Merged, incorporated two smushed tiaras together.
yeah, I'm not sure. It is a striking visual, but that's all I can say about it. It's
Yeah,
the most attractive look because
yeah.
it just feels like two different styles.
Yeah, they don't merge, in
Yeah,
my opinion.
but I mean, we last saw it worn by one of the ladies, Sarah Curzon, when she married a race car driver in 1967. And then when Prince Harry was dating Cressida Bonus, her mother was the daughter of one of the Earls Howe, and there was talk that she might have worn this tiara if she married Harry.
Well,
So
we all
there,
know what happened there, so yeah.
yeah, a missed opportunity.
Oh well.
But now this is nice to see this heirloom. Her husband was the deputy leader of the House of Lords for the past 2 decades, but I haven't spotted her attending this ceremony until now.
Oh, okay.
Maybe she thought it's the last time, so might as well come.
Might as well, yeah.
Yeah. And then beside her, we had this lady wearing this tiara with it looked like star sapphires, but like very sparse, just a couple of stones on a metal frame. So
Yeah.
too notable. But then we go to the next slide and we can see all the other ladies in tiaras. There's a fringe tiara on the left corner there. There's a Russian style Kokoshnik tiara, which I believe was also once worn by Grand Duchess Maria Vladimirovna for an event
Hmm.
somewhere. And on the right corner here, we see this lady here who's wearing that white gown and tiara that we've spotted at a lot of places. And we weren't able to identify her before, but I do want to mention that we've actually had Regal Events reach out to us and say that that is actually Lady True, whose husband was the previous leader of the House of Lords.
Oh, okay.
That's
Mystery
why she's
solved then.
present everywhere.
Oh, okay. I must
Yes.
say, looking at that photo, it just reminds me of, like back in the 60s when you used to get Princess Marina and Princess Alice and all the gang.
Oh
And
yeah.
you're like, compared that to this photo,
Yeah.
God, that looks drab.
It does. Like, I mean, thinking about it from one of the last days type thing, what kept running through my head was the Tuileries Palace on the day before it was stormed by the crowds in 1792. And it's like just the last bit of people hanging on before everything collapses.
God.
So,
Well, this podcast is turning out to be really cheerful, isn't it?
I mean, we do try.
It is try. But yeah, I actually might put up an image just to contrast, but you can see that yes, fair enough, the hereditary system may, need some readjusting, but you're losing the sparkle.
You really are.
Oh,
Yeah. And then we have one last photo of all the ladies, a couple of ones remaining, few tiaras. I mean, I'm not sure how many of them are hereditary peeresses and how many of them are just wives of Lord life peers, but it is kind of an interesting thing. You can tell which ladies like make an effort and then try to dress up in tiaras, and there's others who just kind of show up in whatever and put a jacket on and call it a day.
call it a day, yeah. Oh God, that's depressing.
There's a couple with headbands on trying to look like tiaras when you're like, yeah, that's not a tiara.
Oh, come on. Even if you don't own, you can rent one.
Oh yeah, like Bentley and Skinner would only be happy.
We're not giving their business.
Oh yeah. And then we go on to the last slide where I asked you kind of what you thought about this year's state opening of Parliament, and kind of it's a nice bit of glitter in July, but other than that, what were your thoughts?
Oh, again, sorry to be on like a downer on this episode, but it is like you say, it's looking now a bit of a last gasp kind of affair. I mean, if we didn't have Princess Antonia, what on earth could me and you talk about? Like,
Exactly.
yes, we've got the royals, but I don't know. It's just God, we
Yeah,
might be
with
out of a
Royals,
job.
I mean, I literally copied the same thing as I did from the last state opening because they changed nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to evolve, see how these things evolve. I mean, in the picture, those wigs, they weren't, they're what, from the 17th century. So, these things do evolve. Parliament hasn't always been like that. Who knows what the next incarnation will be? I just, it would be nice to have a teeny tiny bit more glitter.
Yeah, I mean, glitter has been on the way out for the past couple of years, especially we saw that dismissal coronation.
Hmm.
And kind of this was one of the last like, proper examples of British pomp and pageantry we would really look forward to. And if they get rid of this, then
Oh,
what's
God. I'm sorry, everyone. Just probably like lowered the tone, like it's all
I mean,
over.
it's been a bit of a downer ever since we started off.
Yeah, it's just like it's all going. Let's know.
Uh,
Oh
well,
well, what's next? What have we got to look forward to next?
I mean, we had the King of Malaysia's installation ceremony, and even that with like a massive amount of tiaras and glitter was not as impressive as we would have hoped. So, and then
Maybe we'll have to start covering historical events. Just like, oh, remember how it was. Like
I
really
think
go harder
one
than a
thing that,
soldier.
oh yeah, that's I think gonna happen sometimes. And I mean, we have covered quite a lot on the Royal Watcher of like the previous state openings of Parliament. So you can see all the moving and the videos of all the peeresses and the royal ladies coming down in tiaras, which is always amazing to see.
Hmm.
But
Okay.
I think in terms of next events, look forward to probably might be next month when we reconvene to discuss the wedding of Princess Martha Louise of Norway, which will give us quite a lot to discuss about, no doubt.
Mm, okay.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope to be back with you again soon.
Yep. Take care.